Today I'm talking about the concept of self-leadership and what it means to me, some of my experiences, and what self-leadership might mean to you as the individual. So while I'm a happiness concierge now, yes, that is my official job title, it wasn't always so happy. At the age of 22, I worked myself to the ground. I worked 24 hours, I would often sleep at my desk, and I actually passed out before work one day. And at the age of 24, I was working so hard that I couldn't stand up to go to work one day. I had to take 6 months off work, and that's when I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and adrenal fatigue, which is commonly known as burnout. You know, work was so important, and let's face it, not much has changed. I still love work, I do. It's a part of my identity. But work was so critical to who I was that I wasn't able to make sensible decisions at work. I wasn't able to say no, and I absolutely didn't feel comfortable asking for help or having assertive conversations. And doctors, psychologists, friends, family, my parents had told me, I think you need some help, or we want to help you. And I couldn't hear it until I couldn't enjoy a Beyonce concert. So what changed? Well, I realized when I look back at my history that a lot had changed. And the first started with making a decision to be the leader of my own career, of my own life. But it wasn't until I made a decision to own outcomes, to own my career, that stuff really started to change. So when I look back at my 20s, I think a few lessons. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't feel comfortable having constructive conversations. The client was always right, so I was always saying yes and thinking, how am I going to figure out this behind the scenes, No problem. And that, I've still got that in me, let's face it, it's who I am. But not knowing to ask for help in times of needs limited my success and actually dug me into the ground. And now I have a team of nearly 20 happiness concierges helping people like we are here today in organisations ace their work and life. So what makes those happiness concierges who they are? Well, when I put out the word, right, I need some happiness concierges to join my team. This is a proper company, let's do this. Over 100 people applied. And out of those 100 people, 30 were shortlisted. Out of those 30, 15 were shortlisted from there, and 8 were invited to come to my boot camp where I taught them everything I know over 3 days. And I treated it like an audition. If you can survive boot camp with me, let's talk about an opportunity. And so out of those 8, 3 were shortlisted for a role, and 2 made it past the first 3 months of training. So what makes those 2 different? Well, the first factor in all of my happiness concierges is this. They have an internal locus of control. The idea, which was termed in 1954 by psychologist Julian Rotter, is that when one has an internal locus of control as opposed to an external locus of control, it is the belief system that they can control outcomes, that the individual can control outcomes. So an example at work might be if you're given an exercise at 3 p.m, instead of saying, it's 3 p.m, what can you do? Someone with an internal locus of control might be more inclined to say, it's 3 p.m, how can I get this done by 9 a.m? What can I do to get it done? Someone with an external locus of control is more likely to blame external factors or fate or luck. They might be more inclined to say things such as, look, there was nothing I can do. It is what it is. What are you going to do? It's just the system. It's just the internet. They're more likely to blame other factors. So individuals with a highly honed internal locus of control are real go-getters. They're great at problem solving, and they're great at creatively coming up with ideas. So that was the first factor. The second factor is what each of these happiness concierges shared or have shared is an epic failure in their life before, or what they think is a failure. So for me, as a workaholic, it was pretty mortifying telling people I couldn't go to work. That was my identity. So when we look at the internal and external locus of control, we also look at if you've had an epic stuff up or what you deem as a failure, and all failure is relative, what made these happiness concierges different was that they saw a learning from that failure as opposed to I am less than from that failure. They had a failure, if you like, and survived. So they made a lesson out of that. And the third factor of each happiness concierge is they make a decision every day. to be the leader of their own careers. And they're not waiting for a title to do that. Every day they're making a decision. Today I solve problems. Today I'm going to be the bigger person in the room. Today I'm going to lead to outcomes. So this was pretty interesting when I looked at this data, when I looked at the feedback of our clients over the last 5 years. And it got me researching even further. In a study by Google called Project Aristotle, is anyone familiar with this study? Super interesting. They reviewed 180 teams, both high-performing teams and low-performing teams. Project Aristotle. And I've included these notes in your take-home pack so you can read up on it or write it down if you like. Project Aristotle. And after reviewing these 180 teams, they found a few factors separated the high-performing teams from the low-performing teams. So factor one, each team who is higher performing had a high degree of psychological safety. What does that mean? Feeling comfortable to say, no, I don't think I can deliver that, or asking for help, or I've made a massive stuff up and I'm not sure what to do next. Feeling comfortable to fail or ask for help with a team member, or say, I know I said I'd meet that deadline, but I really need some help. Easy to say, sometimes it can feel pretty hard to do at the moment. What else does that mean? Number two, it was all around the other 4 factors within top performing team were around meaning. This job has meaning to me. Impact, I know how my role impacts the wider team. And get this, dependability. I can rely on my teammates when it hits the fan. I can rely on my teammates when things stuffs up. When I say, hey mate, I know we said we'd deliver that, but we've got this massive problem over here. This tech isn't talking to that tech. What do we do? That dependability piece. And all of these pieces together separated the meaning of the team. And here's the other key insight. Group norms, how individuals talk to each other, had greater influence than individual performance. So while you could be a star performer and you're hitting your targets and you're nailing it, unless teams knew how to work together, it didn't actually matter necessarily how amazing the individual was. It was about the group norms. On that, group norms had greater influence than individual performance. So group norms being, do we turn up for meetings on time, or are we a bit more of a casual culture? Group norms being, do we bond over food or snacks, or do we prefer to do our own thing? Group norms being offsites like we're here today. And the other super interesting factor, each individual in a team got a unique chance to speak within the team. It didn't have to be within one meeting, pardon me, it didn't have to be within one portion, but over the day of the teams that they surveyed in the high status, in the high performing status, each individual got a chance to say their part. So that's something I noticed this morning. Everyone got a chance to say their part. And even sitting in silence at times to say, come on, what other feedback do you have about the offsite? After a few moments, most people were inclined to put up their hand. So I think that says a lot about your amazing culture. So here's something I would like you to consider as we talk about the concept of self-leadership. If we're interested in an internal locus of control, if we're interested in knowing how to show up to work, and if we're interested in learning from our failures or perceived failures, what does it mean for us as a team? So I've actually prepared a fun exercise for you this morning. If you open up your worksheet, you'll see on the left-hand page of page 2. So you'll open up and see what is the Happiness Concierge traffic light system. That's right. When am I performing at my best? And it comprises 3 categories. Category 1, green zone, when you're feeling or experiencing a kick-ass vibe. So an example of that might be, I'm feeling good. Maybe I'm facilitating, maybe I'm with my great teammates, or maybe as an introvert, I'm having some well-needed time alone. Now, time alone. When I'm in my green zone, it means that I'm feeling good and I've got the circumstances that support that. When I'm in my yellow zone, I'm not feeling too hot, but I'm not out of control yet. When I'm yellow, I'm feeling a bit anxious, a bit fidgety, a bit nervous. I'm absolutely overthinking things and or avoiding doing things, let's face it. And the circumstances usually are either I've said yes to too many things, I promised too many things, I don't have enough time, and I probably haven't eaten, let's face it. And if I'm in my red zone, this is when I feel out of control. I'm feeling grumpy, annoyed, and I'm no longer in my internal locus of control. No, 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 no. I want to blame others. Everything's too hard. I don't want to do anything. Why is everyone so annoying? The very antithesis of my authentic self, if you will. And what are the circumstances? There's not enough time. I'm not exercising, and I haven't maybe balanced my introvert time with my extrovert time, because I'm a little bit of both. So as an individual exercise, I want to invite you on page 3. If you look to your examples on page 2, and you've got a clear blank sheet on page 3, take a moment to write down what you might be experiencing when you're in your green zone, in your red zone, and in your yellow zone, and why that might be. And I'm seeing a few are going from red to green and green to red, and bypassing the highway of yellow. Good for you. In pairs, I'd like you to share what's come up for you in your yellow and red zones and your theories as to what might influence that. So an example might be, I'm noticing that I actually get a lot more done when I'm in my red zone, which is one of my happiness concierges, because her stress zone is her happy zone. For other team members, they get nothing done in their stress zone and they feel overwhelmed, and asking for help can be tricky. So share what comes up for you in your yellow and red zones, and it's okay if you don't have a yellow zone, and then we'll share as a group some of the core themes that came out. So we'll allocate 2 minutes for this, just sharing in pairs or next to us. All right, gang. I'm seeing some really productive discussions here. Yeah? I'm curious, what's coming up for us in the yellow zone? How did you go over here?
You don't know.
Yes. So the comment is, in yellow zone, I can feel rushed. There's not enough time. I'm just winging it, and probably doing a competent job.
Yeah,
but for you, that's a yellow activity. That's not a just wing it, feeling good. That's a winging it, sitting in the middle. Is that right? Yeah, yeah. And so what contributes to that? A lack of detail, not enough time to breathe? Well, it's so interesting. It tells us a lot about the culture for some people. You know, in your green zone, things look perfect, or they're thriving, or you've got enough time to schedule. For me, I love the wing zone. So it's all relative, isn't it? And a lot of sales consultants love that sense of, whew, just made it, keeps them alive. And so when you moved on to the red section, what came up there?
Just in red view.
Yeah, yeah. I think a term I heard over here was deep red, when I'm in my deep red.
Red.
Yeah. There's red and there's deep red, friend. I thought that was really cool. That was really cool. So the comment was, I don't feel prepared, there's too much. And this one, oh, gulp, you promised you'd do something and then you can't. How many of us feel that that's a red zone? That's a bit of a red zone for me. Yeah, it feels crap, doesn't it? Yeah. And what's that due to? Overscheduling? Are you a colleague from the say yes era? Are you one of...
I'm getting better at the no category.
The no category, yeah.
I think I've gotten better over time.
Yeah, it's a skill that we work on. Thanks for sharing. I really appreciate that. Amazing.
And it just never stops.
That's right, that's right. So the comment was around feeling overloaded and unsustainable norms, and talking about the idea of normalizing a workload, because normal is relative, isn't it?
Yeah.
And once we become accustomed to a way of working, whether it's sustainable or not, it's another discussion for another day, particularly around this time of year. But when something becomes normal, it becomes quite hard to go to a more sustainable pace, even if it's in our best interests. Because when something's normalized, we tend to think, well, you know, at least it's Monday, or at least it's the end of the week, or at least I've got a campaign to work on, or at least the tech is working, or at least anything to normalize it. Which doesn't mean that it's a negative thing. It just means we become accustomed to a rate of pace. So did you manage to have a conversation about how often the yellow and red side of things come up at work? And sometimes it's a time of year thing, sometimes it's every Friday at 3 p.m. Did we have a discussion around that? I'd be really curious, because if it's coming up a fair bit, that's an awesome opportunity to think about potential ideas to look in within the business to mitigate that a little bit. How often? Anyone get to that side of things?
What's a healthy balance?
Oh, healthy is relative also.
Some people like red.
Yeah, that's right. So the question becomes, is are my zones getting in the way of me being productive or creative or solving problems? Yeah, that's really about it. So if a customer complaint comes through, am I unable to make a decision because I'm in my zone? That's enabling that. Did you have a thought on that? Yeah. For sharing. That's such a great observation. You know, we can come to this yellow zone and all of a sudden we're in red or deep red, and the work to get back to green, or what might be your yellow, becomes so much harder. And so the work really becomes, how can we notice or document when we're going into those zones during the week? And how can we have a language around that with each other to say, I'm just having a red moment, I'll come back at 10 a.m, I've got to have a coffee, or whatever that might look like, your circuit breaker. So the concept I want to introduce now is the idea of becoming aware of our zones. We're not going to solve it in 1 hour together. How can we become aware of it? How can we consider having a language around it? And a take-home is what might be a circuit breaker to enable me to get that perspective back. So I know clients of Happiness Concierge, when they're in their red and yellow, they have someone outside of their work who they can text to say, I don't know if this is crazy, but what do you think about this? Or they can have a vent or a constructive conversation with a loved one or a friend. Other examples comprise shutting that laptop and walking away. I'm a big believer in going to get a coffee. I know I'm not allowed too many a day, but I'd like to get out of the office and just get some perspective. Sometimes I phone my nephew, who's 2 years old now, and he's wearing no nappies. It really puts things into perspective. So yeah, do you have any ideas on what circuit breakers might look like for you? Yeah, for me it's phone my nephew, who's 2 years old. He hasn't got a care in the world, let's face it. Yeah. What might get you out of deep red into maybe yellow?
Plan my next adventure.
Plan your next adventure. Good one. Yeah.
It might be...
Amazing. Amazing. A great adventure in our midst. Some people say having somewhere to be, someone to love or something to love, and something to look forward to can help us balance us when we're in that zone. So having something to look forward to is critical. I know my fiance loves planning holidays, and I didn't know what a holiday was before I met her. So it's always great to have something to look forward to. Amazing. What other circuit breakers might we have? Hello. Yeah. 6 weeks. Ooh, nice. Nice. That's some green zone real time. Yeah. What would be another circuit breaker when we don't all have we might have a holiday coming up? What might be a smaller one if it's, say, a short week, or what might be a day-to-day circuit breaker in addition to the great adventures? Amazing. Yeah, awesome. So even the act of having a chat. Amazing. How good's that? Yeah. Any other unusual circuit breakers? I've heard some pretty funny ones. Have you got one? We're good. Yeah, so you got a friend at work. Yeah. Amazing. How good's that? Amazing. Well, there's one final thing I'm going to ask you to do. And I do have an ulterior motive. Studies also show that we're more likely to stay loyal to an organisation when we feel like we have a friend at work. Why? Because it's less lonely, you can laugh at yourself, you can have lunch together, and life's too short. So I'm going to distribute these U-Rock cards, and I want you to write your name on it. Write your name on it. And once you've written your name on it, I want you to pass it to your left and write one word that you admire about the person. So if you don't know the person very well, that's okay. You might say they have a great shirt or a great smile. It's okay. And so if you write your name on the flip side, it's okay. On the back, if you write your name.
One card comments, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you want to keep it on your fridge, you might want to remind yourself of how awesome your team think you are.
You want to write about this person?
Yeah, that's right.
What about you?
Be nice.
Clarify the instructions.
Yes, positive. Thank you for asking. Know that when I teach across the world about finding work that matters or work that matters to you, it's less about the actual work, would you believe, and more about feeling valued, feeling recognised, feeling rewarded. And rewards aren't always cash, that's for sure. But if you can make a time to recognise your colleagues, be it over lunch, be it having a laugh at yourself or with each other, I swear to God, it makes such a world of difference. Alrighty, everybody got their card back?
Yeah.
Looking good? Feel pretty good? One of these feels pretty good? I'll leave you with a story from my 4-year-old niece. We were in New Zealand recently, where I'm from, and we're in this beautiful Airbnb. It was this 2-storied affair, and we were overlooking beautiful bush. And her dad was downstairs, my brother, and she was throwing out paper planes, well, you know, planes, paper planes out the window. And she said, "Daddy, Daddy, here you go," and she threw them all out. And then, given that the paper planes had been so successful, she upgraded to throwing out the window a plate. Daddy, Daddy. Yeah, right? And part of me was like, oh, that's pretty impressive. But I had to remember that I was the auntie there. And I said, "Oh, darling, we don't throw plates out the window." And she said, "Sorry, Auntie Wage. I'm still learning." I'm still learning, right? And so when we think about that's one of the youngest members of our growing family, I want to take you to the other side, which is with my 94-year-old grandma who's since passed. And I was many years ago getting ready, and I was getting ready to go out, and I approached her and said, Gran, what do you think?" And Gran was half blind, and she had a glass of whiskey in her right hand. And in her left hand, she grabbed my wrist and she said, "Darling, don't waste a minute." So if a 4-year-old can remind us that we're all still learning in life, and a 94-year-old can say, without even knowing what I look like, "Don't waste a minute," I want to leave that with you, to never waste a minute to tell each other how much you appreciate each other. Share what's really going on in your life, and to use the code of "I'm in the red zone" or "deep red" to say, just give me a little bit of time out and promote a little bit of understanding. Thank you for making the time this morning. And you can use these at work to have a laugh, or have I need a bit of time out, to have a shared experience with your team, with your colleague, and even your loved ones at home. It's been an incredible morning spending time with you. Thank you for joining myself and my team, and looking forward to the next talk. Thank you. Round of applause for you all.